sail the cosmic bay. From Jupiter to Saturn we'll deliver our freight on our starship, sailing through the interplanetary strait. With a hardy crew and a cargo of dreams, through the nebula's mist we'll forge our own schemes. In the vastness of space where no man has been, we'll navigate, chart the unexplored galactic highway. Give home maze upon the starry sea. We're the spacemen sailing through infinity. With our voices loud and our spirits free, we'll voyage across the celestial sea. Voyage across the celestial sea.
In the abyss of the cosmos we set sail. Through crimson skies our ship prevails. Across the stars a celestial flight, metal warriors bound by might. In this realm of shadows darkness unfurls, a symphony of chaos, where planets whirl and nebula, a fury untamed, sailing through the void where nothing's the same. We ride through the cosmos, a metal storm, defying gravity, our spirits transform through supernovas and celestial clouds. Our stellar voyage forever in the skies.
Digging deep in the Martian soil, searching for that precious ore. With pickaxes and heavy hearts, we're the miners of the cosmic shore. On this barren land, we march as one, unearthing treasures under the sun. In the cratered plains where no one dreamt, we're the pioneers on this frontier we're sent. Oh, we mine on the red planet soil, drilling down, down, down for the treasures we toil. With grit and determination, we push ahead for Mars' hidden riches, we're truly bred. We're truly bred.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the stream. I hope everyone's having a fantastic day. Let me just clickety-click some buttons. There we go. Excuse me. Hope everyone is well this morning. Doing as well as can be. Jean, Donald, Spaz, Samantha, Wolfos, Doc. Thank you all for joining. early birds get the narration. Apparently. It's not that my AI is particularly talented, it's just you're seeing the successful ones. The ones that are not good, I throw away. So, not all the songs are good. Actually, majority of them aren't. Copy. Good morning, Corwin. I'm doing okay. Still getting there. It'll probably be a month until we're closer. Maybe 2. Stamina's there. That's not stamina isn't there. Range is there. But we'll just keep chipping away at that every day. Throat's feeling okay. There's no pain or anything, which is always good. It's just the stamina, which can take quite a while to build up again. Basically, need to continuously exercise the muscles so that we can do the thing. The fact that I'm fighting off a bit of a sinus infection at the moment doesn't help. I am feeling decently okay. I don't think... me and my watch have this very... I feel like I slept like crap. But my watch says I slept really well. So... such is the nature of the beast. Yes, it does. It's a digital, what is this? A Garmin watch. So it tries to measure sleep. I'm not exactly sure how it works. Voodoo, as far as I'm concerned, but it apparently monitors sleep. Good morning, Zantizon. I hope you're doing well. But a lot of the sports watches measure sleep. That's true. That's very true. I just also struggled to fall asleep. And I normally judge how well I slept by how difficult it was to fall asleep. Last night was probably a 2-hour process of falling asleep, which is not the worst, but it's not great. Good morning, Mr. Obel. I hope you're doing well. I hear there's a bit of a cold snap going through UK at the moment. A last hurrah before spring. So, I mean, because of my insomnia, going to sleep and going to bed are 2 very different things. I can go to bed and lie in bed for 2 hours before I fall asleep. Or more. But, I mean, even with medication, I was 2 hours last night. Fair enough, Wolfhouse. Fair enough. I mean, we're getting there. And yesterday we did 60%. I think this week we'll just try 60%. And next week we'll push it up to 80? It's not really anywhere. If I do another story, it's 90? I don't know. We'll see what happens. Fair enough, AJ. Fair enough. I still think it's voodoo. And it's quite an expensive watch. But the only reason I got it is because, one, its battery lasts 2 weeks. And a lot of the other digital watches don't last nearly that long. 2, the watch face is always visible. So it must use something like e-ink. So I don't have to look at my watch, push a button, and see the time. Like with most digital watches. No, I can't listen to anything while I fall asleep. No, this is a Garmin. But the one watch before that didn't work properly. The next watch gave me an allergic reaction, and then this one just worked. It didn't give me an allergic reaction or anything. Which is weird. No. I try not to eat watches. It just wastes all the time in the world. Yeah, fair enough, AJ. I mean, it depends on the this is a survival watch, not a survival, a camping watch. So it's designed to last longer. I don't have a lot of functionality that a lot of the other digital watches have. Or smart watches, not digital watches. But I'm okay with that. I want a watch to be able to tell the time. And it does things like measure my steps and my heart rate. My sleep. That sort of stuff. But mostly it was for the battery life and the watch face. I mean, because the watch face is permanently on, you'd expect the battery to run out faster, but it's... I've got a couple tattoos, yes, Zanti. I have no idea what it was. I've never had that allergic reaction before. So something on that mid-tier watch just wasn't agreeing with my skin. Although, I say that. When I bought this watch, it didn't do anything. And about 2 months afterwards, it caused a massive rash on my left hand. So I moved it to my right hand, and it's been fine there. But that was around about the time where I had my first allergic reaction in years. And we don't even know what that reaction was to. Yeah, I mean, the e... I don't know whether it's... I'm assuming it's an e-ink display to save battery life. But it could be something else. Yeah. I mean, it's all about what you want out of the watch. Like I said, this one was a bit expensive, but it had all the stuff that I wanted, and I needed a watch. So, there we are. I mean, it's already scuffed from bashing into things. But, hey, that's fine. I don't think I've worn plenty latex gloves and it hasn't caused a problem with me. So it was a very weird thing. I think it's because my system was very run down. It was causing problems. Good morning, Mackenzie. I hope you are doing well. So there is this hand, if you tattoo, so this arm's basically a full sleeve. And then this arm is a sticker arm, so it's got random tattoos. I've got some on my chest, some on my legs. Fair enough, Grant, but I don't think it's latex, because I've had 2 operations since then, and there hasn't been a problem with it. And the spot was at the back of the watch, So I think it could have been in a nickel or whatever they're using at the back. But it hasn't happened since, so it's not a problem. I think it's just because my body was very run down. Because that was in the period where I had like the 5 months of infection. So my sinus infection for 5 months. So it was around about that time that the watch gave me a rash. So I'm not too worried about it. Mr. Obel, it is called Behold Humanity. He changed the title. Fair enough, Mackenzie, but thank you for popping past. It is appreciated. Yeah, I think I'm the only person who's had any form of emphysema in my family. And I get it in such an awesome place. That would be my ear canals. Fantastic stuff when that happens. Oh, so itchy. Oh. Yeah, so I get eczema in my ear canals. I like I said, I just think it's because my body was run down. Now I just wear it on my right hand just because I'm used to it now. Well, thankfully the eczema isn't active all the time, but when it is active, it's ridiculous. I just use cortisone cream. But it doesn't happen too often. But it happens. Enough that it's annoying. So, I mean, for a very long time, I just use my cell phone for everything. But I don't know. It's a weird thing. When I started working, this would have been 25 years ago, my dad said to me, and I've heard this numerous times, that you need to take your first paycheck and you need to go buy a good watch. Just to show people that, you know, you can tell. I mean, at the time, we didn't have smartwatches. And it was a kind of a symbol that you're doing okay, that you can afford a okay watch. So, I mean, it wasn't like I had to go buy an expensive watch. I just had to go buy a good watch. And that's kind of stuck with me. So I didn't wear a watch for 20 years. But when the channel turned a profit, it was like, okay, I like a watch. Because I don't always carry my cell phone with me. So I went and got one. And that one turned out crap. So I went and got a more expensive one, which gave me the rash. And then I got this one, which is quite expensive. And I'm quite happy with it. Not that I've noticed, Gene. I think it's the Sapphire 7. I bought it a year ago. Yeah. I know it's the one with the solar panel screen, so I can generate a bit more. Sapphire Solar Edition, I think it's called. So, I mean, it's got built-in GPS for hiking. Last 2 weeks, it's got all the normal digital stuff. Well, it's awesome, Nick. That is very awesome. My other consideration is we have a lot of load shedding, and at that time when I was getting this watch, we had tons of load shedding. So my idea was at least I would have a watch to tell the time if there's no power. I do own a pocket watch. It's my grandfather's. But it was one of the first sort of mass-produced watches, so it's not worth a lot, other than sentimental value. Yes, I am, Psycho. We have moved on to the next step of moving to Portugal. We were waiting for the house to clear, so that took 5 months. To sell the house took 1 day. We sold the house in 1 day, took 5 months of paperwork to make it not my problem. So we were kind of waiting for that before we moved on to the next step. And the next step is creating bank accounts and stuff like that. So hopefully we're on schedule. Although I had a funny... we couldn't do it last week. The lawyers. They couldn't make our bank account last week because the bank manager was on leave. My thought was, surely there's more than one bank manager. But apparently not. So, gotta learn to take it back a pace, maybe. Not a problem, Donald. Not a problem. Thanks, Doc. Much appreciated. I mean, this is the house that got broken into twice when we moved out. So I was paying a 24-hour security guard to be there. I was paying for a security system to be installed and monitored. And having to pay the rates and taxes, having to pay the insurance, all of that stuff. So every month was just eating money. Psycho, the bank account is specifically related to the visa. So one of the visa requirements is I need a bank account in Portugal, and then I need a certain amount of money in that bank account before they'll do the visa. Yes, Jeremy. No planning on my own. It's just randomly how it worked out. A couple of tearjerkers. But tonight's one, tomorrow's one. Yeah, the next couple are either light-hearted or science fiction-y action. But yes, it amazes me how sometimes the stories just cluster together in theme, and there's not any planning on my part. Grant Nick, that would be poverty. And very lax laws regarding crime. Or maybe not even lax laws enforcing crime, shall we say. So I live in Johannesburg. Did. And I used to live in one of the shadier parts of Johannesburg. Not the shadiest by any imagination, but also not great. Yeah, I mean, it's been all over the place. But it's good. Variety. And I mean, I know it's not everybody's cup of tea, but if I just keep doing one very specific type of story, I typecast myself into only ever doing that type of story. But as doing multiple different subgenres of HFY, I can at least do that and nobody's going to be surprised. I mean, the videos might not perform as well, but you never know what's going to be a hit, I suppose. Yeah, I'd imagine that would be very awkward. if you see me doing this and this, I'm not picking my nose, I'm just scratching it, because the moustache tickles the nose. I tried to preempt this because I put some cream on here to nail that down and then trimmed my nose hairs, but it only helps so much. The thing I like about the Sphinx one is, quite simply, you do not need to be over the top to make an HFY story. You can make an HFY story that is not quite over the top, big action, big everything. The scale of the HFY doesn't matter. It's the story of the HFY that matters. So, this had 2 characters with no stakes. The universe wasn't in peril, the entire galaxy wasn't dying. It was just two beings. One life. So that was, I think I like that. Fair enough, Wolfhouse. I find, write the story, leave it alone for about a week, and then go back. So that your mind gets cleared, and then you can read it with sort of a new eye. I'm not ignoring you, chat. I am just doing some second screen shenanigans. So, actually, that means I am ignoring you. But I'm ignoring you for a good reason. Alright. Oh, thank you, Mackenzie. I'm glad you're enjoying it. Good morning, Lord Volpex. I hope you're doing well. Yeah, I mean, I like to keep it varied. Don't want to pigeonhole myself. I'm already pigeonholed into HFY, mostly. So I don't want to do that more. Fair enough, Lord Volpex, fair enough. People do frown when you sleep at work. Hold on. I'm a streamer and a YouTuber, so Only person who's going to shout at me is me. Oh, and, the audience. A sleep stream. It's easy money. Fair enough, Spaz. I mean, HFY is sci-fi, and there are lots of other subgenres, so there's still variety in the stories. It's not like No Sleep, which gets very repetitive, even though HFY does get repetitive, especially after 4,000 stories. But there's enough variety to keep attention. Fair enough, Mr. Obo. But I work from home. I just have an entire audience of 100,000 people to judge me. So, working from home doesn't mean I get judged in person. I get remotely judged. It's not that bad. I enjoy the more light-hearted stories. Personal preference. So, I mean, I'm a Terry Pratchett fan, so I kind of like that tongue-in-cheek humor. I mean, so the series stories are okay, and the tearjerker stories are okay. But if I had to choose out of the three, I'd go with the humorous story. Probably Hawk Force. I don't know which one it was, but yeah, no, it should be. I thought we did it. Let me just make a note to double check. Okay, mental note written down, so it's not a mental note. Fair enough, Mr. Obo, fair enough. Good Omens was a good book. Well, we don't really break it up. I mean, all 200-ish chapters is book one from the author, but I can only make 10-hour videos. So I have to break it into 10-hour slots. And then that would push us up to 60 hours of narration, 70 hours of narration. I'm not sure, I'll have to check the exact numbers. Thank you very much, Jeremy. It's appreciated. But always remember that you need to look after you and yours first before you worry about me and mine. Alright. There we go. Alrighty. I think it's time we did some work. Work, I tell you, work. Okay. Stuff and things are happening. Don't know how well my voice is going to hold up today because I'm still in cortisone. And that, no matter how well it fixes infections and inflammation and stuff, destroys my voice. Because it just dries everything out. To the point where it's like almost impossible to hydrate the vocals. Oh, excuse me. Why? Ugh. I wasn't yawning before the stream, but now I am. Alrighty. So for those that are new, I don't know if some people here are new. This is the story. We're going to go through it. We're going to apply where are we? There. We're going to apply voices, which are listed down below here. But these are listed because if you want to have me say something in one of these voices, you can just super chat me with the number and whatever you want me to say, as long as it's, within reason. So I'm going to use these to mark out which characters are talking before we head into the narration. Sorry about that, Mackenzie, but I hope you have a good evening. And it's not like it's late for me, it's 10 o'clock in the morning. But like I said, I felt like I slept crap. So it could be that. Fair enough. Time travel messes with everything. We'll go with M10 instead. F1. M10. M1. F1. M10. I was going to give it a monotone voice, but I think a less monotone voice works better. So both stories today should be roughly 25 and 28 minutes respectively. This one, 25 minutes. No, that's not wanted. Close that. Open that. That's what I wanted. Snively voice. He's the baddie who gets the snively voice. Shimmy girl no like bath. Yeah. M4. M4. M1. M10. M10. Mm-hmm. I think we'll go with M3. Let's get the crap out of me. Just holding the shift button. It wasn't just hitting it, it was holding it. Computer got upset. Got very upset. Mustn't do that again. I used to have this habit where I used to tap the shift button while I was trying to think of something, and I would always get that, what's it, what is it popped up? There's a pop-up when you do it. It's supposed to be useful. But I always found it was less than useful. M3. M10. Sticky keys, yeah. I used to turn them off. M1. M4, excuse me. Yeah, fair enough, fair enough. I don't work with spreadsheets often these days. Good morning, Captain No Name. I hope you're doing well today. Yeah, very much. It's also that pitch where it's just, you can't ignore it. This is M10. M4. Okay. He didn't turn out to be Snively, so I might actually change that. Her voice. That's great. Sorry about that, Donald. Really didn't mean it. Oops. That was definitely not what I wanted. Copy H. Fine. All right. We're replacing M2 with F. M4 with F2. This is actually M4, 3. Okay. Okay, so this is an F2. This is going to be M2. I got the two 18s confused. So there are two. There's Lichtenv and the other one with an H. Yeah. Katinji. Oh, Katinji is not a person. Yeah, so we've got HT Pin, which is female, and Liv T is male. Oh, so it wasn't too much of a fake up. So this is M2. M10. M1. M2? Question mark. M2. F1. No, this is M4. M10. M1. M2. M10. M2. M1. 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 M10. M2. M2. M1. 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 Oh, M18, I think. Yeah, they're up to no good. M1, M1, and then M2, M2, M1, M1, M2, M1, M10, M1, 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 M4, Snively, Snively, M10, M10, M4, M10, excuse me, M4, picking a fight with an AI, sure, M10, M4. Good morning, Founder Dash. I hope you are doing well today. M2. M2. M4. M1. M2. M1. M4. M10. M10. M1. 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 Bad stuff's happening. M1. 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 M4. M2. M2. M1. M10. M10. M4. M10. Ooh, is there a big twist coming, chat? Excuse me. Founded Ash, I'm still recovering from surgery. So while I recover, I'm doing TFOS just to keep the channel going. Once I'm fully recovered, I'll start doing series again. Most likely a month or two before that happens. Fair enough, Wolfos, fair enough. Oh, I didn't do that. Hit the wrong button. Seriously? No, it's nice, Gene. Awesome. Good morning, Nigel. Hope you're doing well. Okay, that is that. Alrighty. I'm going to take a quick pee break. I'll be right back. I'll leave you with some sea shanties, and I'll be back in 2 shakes of a lamb's tail.
We're the spacemen sail the cosmic bay. From Jupiter to Saturn we'll deliver our freight on our starship, sailing through the interplanetary strait. With a hardy crew and a cargo of dreams, through the nebula's mist we'll forge our own schemes. In the vastness of space where no man has been, we'll navigate, chart the unexplored galactic highway. Heave ho, mateys, upon the starry sea. We're the spacemen sailing through infinity. With our voices loud and our spirits free, we'll voyage across the celestial sea. Voyage across the celestial sea.
Alrighty, back. Yep, turn screen on. Open teleprompter. Nope, then don't wake up, stupid screen. There we go. Alrighty. Not really sure what you mean, Spaz. You mean we have similar channels?
Treasures under the sun, in the cratered plains where no one dreamt. We're the pioneers on this frontier we're sent. Oh, we mine on the red planet soil, drilling down, down, down for the treasures we toil. With grit and determination, we push ahead for Mars, hidden riches, we're truly bred. We're truly bred.
Alrighty. For those new, I'm going to go into recording mode. Recording mode looks like this. And it means that I'm going to be focusing on recording rather than chat. So if you say something and I don't respond, it's not that I'm ignoring. Well, it is that I'm ignoring you, but I will get to you eventually. But to get to Spaz's question, I don't have any particular thoughts. We both have very different styles of narrating. Some people like my style, some people like his style. And some people like both. So, good. I have no problem. Same with Amelia, same with Zren. I wish them all the best of luck. Yeah, don't know what else to say. And the only reason I have a problem with AI channels is they don't ask for permission. That would be it. But other than that, it's being a YouTuber isn't a zero-sum game. It's not me or them. It can be me and them, or often is. All right, recording mode activated. Sit up straight in the uniform. Don't sit up quite that straight, otherwise my head gets cut off. Kinda need that. It holds my hair up. Alrighty. Glasses, almost forgot. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space, where I take stories from across the internet and read them for your entertainment. Now, people have been picking on the like button, and it's feeling very self-conscious. So, if you could just tap that like button just a little bit, to give the like button some reassurance. I'm sure that it will enjoy it. While you're at it, just also hit that subscribe button if you're not already. But, more importantly, let's get on to the story. It is called Calling Upon Sentiment by Deo Mech. Another virtue was an old AI. They had seen 1,000 years in the galactic scene, most of it as a roaming diplomatic ship. With care, they tended to the rotating crew of human bios that and bots, carting them to one star or another. Virtue had never spearheaded policy. The leading committee of AI were too focused on the big picture for their taste, but they had enjoyed carrying it out. However, after 2 galaxy-wide wars, hundreds of smaller conflicts, thousands of civil wars, and millions of politicians, Virtue was considering a change of pace. As a caretaker AI, closer to a god than a calculator, they had options. They could watch over the planets, devote themselves to study of the universe, or modify their ship body into a long-term habitat. There were other choices, but none of them involved human bios, and Virtue was too attached to those adorable little flesh. And Virtue was too attached to those adorable little flesh-based beings. "I can feel you getting sentimental, Virtue," said Niha Nguyen, ending her virtual debrief. It took barely a thought for Virtue to activate the avatar bot in the walls, relying on physical representatives instead of mind-to-mind communication was old-fashioned, but they would accept that description. Currently, they were holding 14 simultaneous conversations with biohumans on their main body, providing information to 6 bios already on planet, and discussing a myriad of topics, with hundreds of other AIs located light eons away. Their old habits didn't make them less powerful. "How can you tell when I'm sentimental?" Virtue asked through the bot, a floating sphere with an unseemly amount of sparkles. You start playing that one old song with the violins. I guess it's like the biological equivalent of humming, isn't it?
An astute analogy. Virtue twirled his avatar bot around, sparkly brighter. I'm too old to hide my feelings anyway.
I guess you are. It must be nice having lived such a long time.
You're no spring chicken yourself, Niha. Do you plan to die soon?
Their question was with genuine curiosity. The bio hadn't put in a request for termination, and she was only just past her 2nd century. Most human bios liked to experience at least 4 before calling it quits, and many continue past that. She laughed.
Not at all.
Do you?
No, but retirement might be in my future.
A flicker of curiosity appeared on her face for 0.01 seconds before it was replaced with mock shock. Sneeze. I skidded away.
Never fear, it is gone.
Virtue, it's bad luck to talk about death and retirement before a mission. Don't you know? You're asking for the universe to spite you.
No AI worth their quantum believes in luck,
said Virtue, but their light flickering, their tone tough was fond. Their tone, though, was fond.
You bios and your faulty pattern recognition.
Ah, but you do believe in spite. A long sigh reverberated through the bot.
I do.
She grinned, smug, and didn't press the point. Annoyed, Virtue changed the music from an ancient violin piece to a new techno piece that most of their crew, save Niha, enjoyed. She made a crude gesture in Virtue's direction before strapping into the seat. Anyway, I'm ready, Virtue. Send me off.
With pleasure.
The bot melted back into the walls, and Virtue activated the autopilot. They felt a twinge of concern during the launch from the bay. So much could go wrong during every mission, and if Virtue let themselves, they could devote their entire processing power to fretting over what could happen. It was known, but not often discussed, that AIs had favorites. Some were embarrassed about it, seeing it as a dereliction of duty. AI should care for every biological equivalent. AI should care for every biological equivalent, and there was always the fear of bias entering decision-making algorithms. Other AI, generally those who worked with warships or scientists, thought that it was demeaning to have preferences for fleshy beings that were so slow. These, Virtue noted with amusement, tended to be the ones who were the most protective of their totally not favored biologicals. Virtue took more of a middle ground and stance. Virtue took more of a middle ground stance. They liked and cared for all their charges, but they had preferences. Nia was one of their favorites. She had the fortune of being involved in dozens of significant Nia was one of their favorites. She had the fortune of being involved in a dozen of significant events in the last 2 centuries. Niha was one of their favorites. She had the fortune of being involved in dozens of significant events in the last 2 centuries, and she had a rather hilarious attitude about the whole situation. A ping caught their attention, and they shifted their processing focus to the planet below. Isn't that the old Kittengi ambassador to humanity? With permission, Virtue borrowed the senses of the human biodiplomat and focused on the squid-like being in the corner. Indeed, it was Ambassador Lichtenv Indeed, it was the ambassador. Lichtenv had once been a general during the Second Sector War, an opposing side. 200 years ago, after peace was achieved, he had been the chief ambassador to Earth. Unusual to see him here, considering his distinguished record. He hadn't been on the guest list, and he was lurking next to the crescent-patterned curtain, simply sipping his drink. Virtue hopped out of their agent senses and pondered. This mission concerned the Shalvans, who were in an awkward stage between learning about the galaxy-wide society and joining it. In their other worlds, they were advanced enough. In other words, they were advanced enough to be annoying, but not enough to be well-mannered. The situation was a bit thornier than Virtue was used to. Though not significantly so. So why was such a distinguished Kittenji here in a backwater? They narrowed their focus further to the agents and their avatar bot, located in the Chalvan's capital city. To the first diplomat, Virtue recommended speaking to the outrageously wealthy businessman by the Horse de Ver. To another, they gently reminded her of Chalvan etiquette and so on. Virtue's bot was holding a conversation with a different diplomat and another Chalvan. Pushing their greater self into this construct, Virtue temporarily suspended the self-running algorithm. Careful with them, joked the diplomat. Humans, both the AI and biologicals, tend towards extremes. You would know, Madam Hittelpin, the bot smiled. The body was human-adjacent, though abstract enough that it didn't trigger the uncanny valley. 2 wars taught us that. The Kittenji raised their glass in a glowing appendage. I was there at the Battle of Klin 4. I still remember how you evacuated and destroyed your own habitat out of spite. Unlike humans, Kittenji naturally had biological immortality. Their veterans were kicking around too, though all of them were flesh-based. 2 wars against humanity had tempered their past disdain for AI into a grudging respect. Relations between the 2 species had been conflict-free since the end of the war and actively friendly for the last 100 years. You aren't the only veteran here, Virtue said through their bot. I see Ambassador Lichten over there. Indeed, Hittenpin responded neutrally. Would you like to speak to him? Gladly. The cat-like Chalvan, a male named Pre, cleared his 2 throats. Pardon? His tone was peevish at being ignored, or more likely, being reminded how minuscule Chalvia was in the galactic scene. I don't understand how your societies are civil after 2 destructive wars. Hittelpin flashed a sequence of colors across her undulating body instead of responding. An algorithm translated the light-based speech immediately. Honored Ambassador Litkov, the human computer mind. Another virtual desires speak to. Honored Ambassador Lichten, the human computer mind, another virtue, desires to speak to you through the robotic intermediary. War can be very informative. Virtue focused their bot's camera eyes on the Chalvan. After a certain point, we knew enough about each other that the conflict was no longer worth it. But your war had no clear victor. Bree looked displeased, his tail flicking from one side to the next. Holding slights is an easy way to get your society broken, especially on the galactic scale. Ambassador Lichten joined them in a time to hear Virtue speak, and he immediately added, Doubly so if your people are immortal. The old ambassador's voice had deepened with age, but there was no other changes since the last time Virtue had met him. The Chalvan huffed. I swear to the middle sister, this clarifies nothing. Diplomat Hiddleton just stated that humans are spiteful.
But we aren't stupid. Virtuebot tilted its head, focusing on Pre. Humans and Kittenji are two immortal civilizations. We would have broken each other irreparably. Humans have a great capacity for spite, yes, said Litton softly, but they have an equally great capacity for forgiveness. That is one of the lessons we learn from them. Both of our societies are at a point where death is either an avoidable tragedy or a choice. Perhaps one day the Chelvia will also reach that point.
The ambassador raised his glass.
Excuse me, I've simply gotten sentimental and off topic. Simply put, humanity are bad enemies to have, but they are even better allies.
At the same time, Licton flashed a rippling sequence of lights across his torso. To the untrained eye or sensor, it seemed no different from a casual expression of bioluminescence that was constantly playing on the Kittenji bodies. Not all of their light-based communications was bright shouting. Not all of their light-based communication was bright shouting that Hiddleton had done earlier. It could be quite subtle. Virtue decoded the hidden meaning immediately. The Chelvians have been acting strange. At the same time, they laughed, drawing the Chelvians' attention back to them. Oh, I suppose that's true, but the sentiment is mutual. The Kittenji are better. No, I suppose that's true, but the sentiment is mutual. The Kittenji are better allies. We learned from your people, too. Like what? Said Hiddleton, her voice amused. At the same time, she conveyed a message through light. I will distract the ambassador.
You forced us to learn patience.
It was the truth. Both the biological and artificial intelligence of humans liked to relapse back to their impulsive, single-minded roots. The Kittenji, on the other hand, came from ambush predators. Their instincts were as patient and cold as the waters from which they arose.
Really? Licton said, flashing an amused purple. I couldn't tell.
Virtue grinned.
No, it's true. Kittenji bureaucracy makes patience a necessity.
They all laughed or did species equivalents, the Chelvin included. As promised, Hiddleton drew Pre into a separate conversation, giving Virtue and Licton a chance to step away.
Let's go outside. The ambassador tilted the water into his beak. I tire of this crowd. As you wish.
The two of them moved into a side balcony. Chelvian architecture rarely had doors. The chatter of the inside party was still loud and clear, but the air was cold and humid, and the bands of Milky Way twisted above their 3 glowing moons.
Beautiful, murmured Licton. I understand why so much Chelvian poetry and religion speaks of the moods, the middle ones specifically. Any species in their infancy would look up and consider her a goddess. Her eternal blooming,
Virtue said in agreement. They were quoting a particularly famous poem about a fall of empires. Melancholy green flashed over Licton before he flashed a couplet.
And her eternal fall.
The youngest and oldest moons were a classic white similar to homeworld Earth's lone moon, but the middle star was a marvel. But the middle sister was a marvel. Blue and gold clouds undulated across an ocean of white, and endless twirls and swirls spread into fractal patterns that truly looked like blooms. It was the kind of beauty that both bios and AI could appreciate. Virtue itched to analyze every wispy cloud. Algorithms whirred at the thought of tracing the endless complexity of chaos. The two former enemies looked at the sky in silence. 400 years ago, Virtue would have placed the chances of ever being friendly with the Kittenji at an unfathomable low. Virtue would have placed the chances of ever being friendly with the Kittenji
Virtue would have placed the chances of ever being friendly with the kitten G to an unfathomably low. But now they were discussing poetry with a former general. Still, Virtue required Licton's expertise in a different matter. What are they planning? I am uncertain, said the ambassador slowly, heavily. But we suspect that there may be an angenitor involvement. While they were having this conversation with Licton, Virtue was still continuing the thousands of miniature tasks. Virtue was still continuing the thousands of miniature tasks they undertook as a matter of course. Advice was dispensed, drinks were served on a ship by their mindless drones, messages were responded to, and Virtue's personal hobby, thousands of songs were analyzed and sorted. Virtue's entire processing stuttered for a millisecond as they internalized the Kinji's response, and then they broadcasted the information on a secure channel to every human within 30 light years, attaching priority status to the panicked memo they sent to the overarching committees. The Angenitors were a species who were at least as advanced as humanity in the kitten G, but unlike either, they had no desire to develop any sort of relationship with the beings who weren't Angenitors. Non-Angenitors were to be used as disposed. Non-Angenitors were to be used and disposed of. Unsurprisingly, humanity had a very poor relationship with the Angenitors, barely more than a strained ceasefire. Crap, Virtue said. Crap, said Virtue. Responses from the committees had begun to flood in. The mission was no longer a mid-level diplomatic one. They sent an additional message to their bios. Non-essential personnel, evacuate. In the room behind them, a few human bios who weren't part of the diplomatic attaché started making their polite goodbyes. Others who were sightseeing on the other part of the cut. Others who were sightseeing on the other parts of the cut. Others who were sightseeing on other parts were. Others who were sightseeing on other parts of the room? Down? Others, who were sightseeing on other parts, cut their trips short and returned to quickly landing shuttles. Damn, this is a mess. Aya Pink, the lead human ambassador to Chalvia, sent a string of curse words and angry complaints to Virtue as she kept her perfectly calm face and smiled at the gracious. The lead human ambassador to Chalvia sent a string of curse words and angry complaints to Virtue as she kept a perfectly calm face and smiled at the garrulous Chalvian. We need to evacuate everyone as fast as we can. On the other hand, some bios were a little more stubborn. I am technically an essential personnel. I am technically essential personnel, Virtue, sent Niha. Stop blaring evacuate in my field of vision. Virtue changed her status to non-essential and made the font even bigger. Fine, you worrywart, but I'm in the middle of a swamp. It'll take me half an hour to get back to the shuttle. Not even a millisecond had passed in real time. A pattern of agreement flickered across Little's body. I was just enjoying a coral reef on Jupiter 5, he said, mournful. But after the intelligence was gathered 3 hours ago, my presence was requested here. At a standard ship's faster speed, it took 2 hours to get from Jupiter 5 to Chalvia. Virtue cross-referenced that log of the ship arrival and departure and noted that the Kadenji ship had indeed entered the system at a rather high speed an hour ago. This is valuable information. At the same time, Virtue shoved a new data point into their decision-making algorithms and shifted processing power away from mundane tasks. After a moment, they also diverted energy towards the ship's energy shields. It is not yet confirmed, Licton said. As said, we suspect. But if it is true, yes, I know. The once general didn't need any further explanation. Jalvia was close to both human and Kittenji systems, much too close for the Angenitors to be meddling with. For almost 2 centuries, the Angenitors had respected the buffer zone. What had changed? Even caught up in a spiral of decision-making algorithms, Virtue's android noted the Lycanthus had turned grey. No lights, no colours. It was just a kittengy sign of mourning. Peace for our days, Lycanthus. Peace for our days. Lycanthus looked back up at the moon. What he quoted wasn't Chalvian poetry. It was a phrase that ended the Second Sector War. Towards the end of the conflict, all the analysis had been clear. The chances of a simple victory were null. Humanity was unlikely to lose, but continuing without change would lead to an endless war that bled the strength from both sides. The war would only be won through genocide. So, humanity had sued for peace. Why bring that up now? A few possibilities were considered and discarded. Had the Kittenji betrayed them? Unlikely. But it was a strong emotional reaction for Lycanthus to display, and it was an odd thing for him to say. In the 10 seconds it took for Lycanthus to elaborate, Virtue had evacuated the majority of non-essential personnel. Only a few human stragglers remained. I fear war's approach, said Lycanthus finally, and yet it seems like an inevitability. This time they said nothing about the faulty pattern recognition of biologicals. This time, Virtue's own pattern recognition agreed. When they continued to stay silent, Lycanthus spoke again. What will you do now? What will you do now? Virtue turned their android sensors away from the moon. We can only wait. Back inside, Virtue let the bot subroutine do most of the socializing. The majority of themselves sat on the back server, fretting, spitting code, as some AI liked to call it. The song of choice in their ship was a drum-heavy but quiet. A throbbing pulse that reminded bios of heartbeats. A whisper of rushing sound accompanied by a whisper of rushing sound accompanied by a syncopated secondary rhythm. Altogether, it wasn't a bad approximation of the womb. Some found it soothing, others found it anxiety-inducing for the same reason. Virtue checked on personnel remaining on planet. A handful of non-essential bios still needed to be evacuated. Niha was working her way to the shuttle. Michael was bandaging a leg of a Chalvian who had fallen, and Bo and Alexandrian were waiting for Michelle to finish. Were waiting for Michael to finish. The diplomatic force had been stripped to 3. Mission head Aya Pink, her assistant Zuri, and Roberto, who was chief of security and had more mods than the average tank. 7 delicate bios were still in danger. So much could happen to them. After the 532nd simulation of things that could happen to them, entirely unusual thanks to the lack of data, Virtue gave up and shunted their focus back to the bot below. The bot had circled around, and now they were back with Pri and General Licton. You really do consider yourself human, said Pri, squinting at the bot, though you have no flesh. Well, of course. Bot Virtue tilted the head. What else would I be? Machine. Both are true. I am machine and human, Virtue corrected. Just an ambassador. Just as Ambassador Aya Pink is biohuman, though the line between us is a bit more blurred than you think. Were you ever human? Pri's prehensile tail twitched. The thought clearly startled him. Was I ever a biohuman, you mean? No. I have always been a machine intelligence. Some other caretakers had their origins in flesh, however. Not many choose that path. Caretaker? Said Pri, puzzled. The word didn't translate directly to Chalvian. The connotation was closer to Den Mother. The human name for a powerful artificial intelligence, General Licton explained. Caretaker AI are the ones who run the majority of human society. Pri sniffed. Yeah, so they puppet around the actual humans, yes? Virtue prepared a response, but to their surprise, Lictons responded before they could. No, that is incorrect. That was the hardest thing for my people to wrap our graspers around too. The biological humans do not enslave the machine humans, and the machine humans do not enslave the biological ones. It is a mutual relationship. The Chalvian seemed unconvinced, and his tail twitched again. Regardless, humans may have created the machines, but that does not make the machines humans. That statement is not logical, said Virtue, patient. Let me turn it around. You were created by Chalvians, but that does not make you a Chalvian. Everything happened in a single microsecond. The last 2 shuttles exploded before leaving the atmosphere. 3 missiles impacted against the larger ship's body. 4 humans died. Another Virtue knew 1,000 things. Another Virtue knew 1,000 things, and its subroutines handled 1,000,000 things in a single millisecond after impact. They sent a notice of death and concordance letters to each of their charges' family and friends. They updated the committees in nearby ships. They evaluated the damage done to their ship's body. The previous power diversion. The damage done to their ship body. The previous power diversion to energy shields had prevented anything more than minor cosmetic damage, but it had been a close call. At the same time, they added this new data to the predictive analysis and traced the most likely path. They broke through the primitive firewalls that protected Chalvian information technology and found evidence of their leaders' deals with the Angenitors. This hadn't been due to coercion, had been due to greed. At the same time, their greater self was frozen with visceral, coke-deep anger and grief. The ship was silent, save for a deep thrum of another Virtue's weapons charging. The ship was silent, save for the deep thrum of another Virtue's weapons charging. They could crack the Chalvian planet into 1,000,000 fragments, just like the bodies of the 4 humans that burned in the atmosphere of a world that they had never hurt. From the perspective of the diplomats in the room below, 2 full seconds had passed. 2 full seconds had passed, and Virtue's bot had simply frozen. Is it broken? Asked Pre, puzzled. They are not. Looked abruptly turned grey. No doubt he had received information on what had just happened. What have you done? Across the room, Aya Pink gasped. Roberto snapped into action, ushering her and her assistant away. A different subroutine handled the safety of the last 3 biohumans on Chalvia, leaving just the Avatar bot and the last human representative on planet. Leaving just the Avatar bot as the last human representative on planet. I could break your planet for what you have done, said Virtue. They made no further attempt at mimicking biological mannerisms. The bot stood completely still. No chest wall rise to mimic lungs, no planned fidgeting, and no vestiges of expression on the metal face. You killed my people. Pre's tail became rigid. We did not. You killed them. You meant to kill everyone. If I did not have any warning, we would not be having this conversation. Those missiles were enough to crack the ship's peacetime shields. Virtue did not move. I could kill you all, and I would be successful. No, do not lie to me. Pre fell silent. The entire room was still. Only the 2 Kittenchi, both in morning grey, even attempted to approach. Virtue ignored them and shifted focus to the communications pinging in their servers. The outpouring of grief and support from their fellow humans was comforting, but the decision they had reached was not. Everyone knew that the Chalvians received the technology to harm humanity from the Angenitors. Humanity would decide whether they would go to war with the Angenitors, but they would not go to war against Chalvia. Bringing their wrath upon Chalvians would be cruel. Virtue wanted to be cruel. I am sorry, my friend, said Licton, his appendage hovering over the bot's hand. My deepest grief for you. They didn't move. I am sorry, too. Another virtue, please. Licton's appendage moved down an inch. Now flesh touched metal. My people tell me that your weapons are aimed at this planet. Please, do not. I will give you time to evacuate, Virtue said, flat. Take all the Kittenji off this planet. I have no quarrel with you. You know that is not what I ask. Humanity is not cruel. You are not cruel. It is a principle of matter. It is a principle of the matter. 1,000 messages bombarded Virtue, asking, begging, demanding them to stand down. They kept their energy weapons at the ready. No! I want to be cruel. I want to be cruel and spiteful, and I am capable of it. It would be so easy. It would take less time than a blink of a human eye. Lichtempf did not have the Lichtempf did not have a platitude to offer, or a moral rationale, or anything of the sort. Instead, he simply save that for those who deserve it. A full second passed, then two. Virtue considered. Then they shattered the moon. They shattered her forever glory. The middle sister, the goddess who sings for change. They shattered her so carefully and deliberately that not a single fragment would reach the planet below. That the pieces would be scattered across the sky in a way that kept the gravitational balance intact. That every time the Chalvian looked up, they would be reminded of Virtue's lost. You were right, Virtue said to Lichtempf. I couldn't do it, but I couldn't do nothing. It's the principle of the matter, as you said. Lichtempf closed his eyes, a thread of shocked white light flickering across his grey mouth flesh. The principle of the matter, he repeated. No, perhaps not. Virtue looked up. The remains of the now-dead god, the celestial body's remnants eclipsing the bands of the galaxy, and a forever void between the two remaining sister moons. Chalvia's memory of this day would last as long as Virtue's. Chalvia's memory of this day would last as long as Virtue's. It is the sentiment. End of story. Alrighty. I'm going into editing mode. I am back. Time to hydrate. Thank you for the kind words, Eric. We're getting there. Every day a bit stronger, every day a bit closer. Thank you for the kind word, Charles. It's very much appreciated. Goodbye, Spaz. I'm probably left already, but I'll say it anyway. Have a good day. Good morning, Crusader. Hope you're doing well. Throat's not too bad. It's just very dry because I'm on cortisone at the moment, so it makes it a bit rough. It's concentration that's a bit of a problem today. I think the sinus infection has set back the recovery a bit. So while I deal with that, I'm just going to try maintain my recovery. And then hopefully by next week, the sinus infection is cleared out properly and I can stop taking cortisone. And then we can push it back up to 100%, or as close as we can get. Grizzman TV, I'm doing as well as can be. I hope you're doing well. That's not good, Captain. Hopefully you're not coming down with anything too bad. Alrighty. Story Nib 2. Move stuff and things around. Stuff and things. Topping up the hydration. And one. And one. So some of these stories are going to be quite old because they've been on my list for a while, but they've been too long. So they've been on the back burner. So now we're catching up. Although there are still longer stories. Longer. Tiberius. I wonder where they got that name from. That is odd. The hell?
Okay, so when I was turning right, this one went dead, and when I faced back forwards, came back. It was just fucking with me. Thank you very much, Postmatic. I would like to claim all the thanks for that, but I tend to have a minimum upvote requirement before I read a story. It's not necessarily all the time, but it does help narrow the stories down. But I mean, sometimes I'll read a story that is quite upvoted and it just doesn't gel with the channel. Yeah, I think it's not a loose wire. These come off. So you can change them, get them fixed and stuff. So I think it was pulled out a little bit. I'd imagine more Star Trek in the origin of Tiberius. M10 M4. Unfortunately, I don't Crusader. I really don't. I haven't been in the trades for a very long time. And it was very specific trades. So you're going to have to check your local area. I mean, I know what some of the guys used to do back in the day is they would just go to all the workshops and ask. It sucks, but it worked to a degree. And then at least it's like local stuff. I'm thinking of Tiberius. Yeah, it's Captain Kirk's middle name is Tiberius. Isn't it? I'm sure it's Tiberius. Can't remember his first. Can't remember his first name. Fair enough, Donald. Fair enough. But I mean, I suppose it is correct. Ah, yes, that's right. James Tiberius Kirk. It probably did originate from Rome. Echo, echo, echo. Rygelians. I do not. Not off the top of my head. Right. I have no idea who's talking. Okay, so M4 is a robot. Good morning, Phoenix Ball. Hope you are doing well. I think this is M4. This would be M10. M4. No. Bad hand. M10. One. One. And one. Awesome. Always good to sleep in a bit, when you mean to. Not so much when it's a work day. What ho? Magic elixir. I think we need some magic elixir. Don't spray. Magic elixir. Not the green one, but close enough. That's the good stuff. Chemicals and caffeine is the only way to go. M10. Not as far as I know, unless it's on my Discord server. I think I've disabled them. I don't really use voice chat on Discord. Maybe somebody's just turned it off for that server. Yeah, that doesn't sound great. And it's very unfortunate, post-matic. But it gives you more time for hobbies, I suppose. But then, hobbies cost money. Always that problem. Either you have time or you have money. Rarely do you have both. Not 10, 1. Yeah, very much. Cheers, Donald. See you in a little bit. But yes, I imagine frontline soldiers, their bodies are destroyed. Not even frontline soldiers. I know of a mechanic who served in one of the wars, whatever, and his knees were just destroyed. Yep. That'll be tonight's video, Gene. While I'm sitting here recording and entertaining you, there is an editing fairy in another room making videos of stuff that I've recorded. Oh, that's something at least, Phoenix. This one's a bit raunchy. But it's fine. It's raunchy in the right way. We're currently working on 20 to 30 minute stories, which are quite long. We'll probably move back to the short ones in a couple of weeks. Well, a couple of days, really. I mean, it really depends on what you classify as a long story. But yeah, I think we've still got quite a long backlog of longer stories to go through. The problem with longer stories in general, whether it's series chapters or T-farces, on a daily basis, there is only so much my voice can take. Before surgery, it was around 15,000 words a day that I could narrate, finished narrations. So I'd probably talk 20 to 25,000 words in a day. And pushing any way past that would just start a spiral where the voice just deteriorates. So I have to ration the time to the T-farce and the series so that we have daily uploads. And then also have enough cushion that if there is a slightly longer chapter or story, I can handle it. So instead of doing a week's worth of stories, I could do one really long story. But a week's worth of stories is better for the channel than one really long story. If that makes sense. Okay, so this is a bit of a goofy one, which is, you know, a welcome change from the last couple serious ones, so that's good. Good afternoon, Brian. I hope you're doing well. I think the longest one on the T-farce channel now is 2 hours. That was a beast. A beast, I tell you. A beast. Not that. We're moving this. And we are opening this. Going into recording mode. Actually, too much water. I shall be right back. Again.
Hoist the sails and let the wind guide our way. We're the spacemen sail the cosmic bay. From Jupiter to Saturn, we'll deliver our freight on our starship, sailing through the interplanetary strait. With a hardy crew and a cargo of dreams, through the nebula's mist we'll forge our own schemes. In the vastness of space where no man has been, we'll navigate, chart the unexplored galactic highway. Heave ho, mateys, upon the starry sea. We're the spacemen sailing through infinity. voyage cross the celestial sea. Oh.
Warriors are we, united we stand. Across the galaxies, we conquer the land.
Alrighty, back. Putting my ears in. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. There might be. I'm not entirely sure. So when stories aren't linked, it's very difficult to pick them out just on the title. Okay. And back to recording. Righty. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space, where we take stories from across the internet, and why did I say we? Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest, definitely having a long day, definitely a Monday. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space, where I take stories from across the internet and read them for your entertainment. This particular story is called Blue Space Princess, written by Crumb J.D. Tiberius Northwind cut a very handsome figure as he drank his alien cocktail in an alien space bar. His hair was blonde and full, his chin broad and strong, and his ice blue eyes looked somewhere in the middle of distance. His Human Alliance Space Force flight suit still fit. Many of the bar's more exotic patrons might not have recognized a human, but practically all knew the rearing stallion of the Space Force from the sight of the emblem on the side of mighty ships that had descended from the stars to help the helpless or smash the enemies of humanity. Of course, the actual patch was gone from the shoulder of Tiberius's flight suit as he no longer was active duty, but alien suns had faded the material of the suit, and so its shadow was still visible where it had once been stitched. Then again, you can't judge a book by its cover. Tiberius was no longer with the Space Force because that noble body frowned on picking up on some random local drugs and selling them to your fellow spacers without even knowing what it would do to them. Projectile vomiting, explosive diarrhea, but no enjoyable high as it happened. Technically, the substances weren't illegal for humans, but the sheer blistering stupidity of the act hadn't been enough for Command to suggest that maybe Tiberius should be better off in a civilian life at the end of his enlistment period. The plan for civilian life had been to use all that military training in the latest technology to secure a high-paying job. Unfortunately, it turned out that the military's technology was distinctly first-gen, and it either hadn't made it to civilian life, or it had, but the civvies were using more refined versions of the tech and thought the military did things in a backwards and boneheaded way. Some ex-Space Force got up to speed to make that work. Tiberius was not one of them, nor was Tiberius suited to college. Even he had enough introspection to realize that he wouldn't last a single term. As autobiographies went, it was certainly suited to ending up in a dive bar, just not an exotic one. Tiberius's trajectory had changed when he came into some money. V37, don't worry, he'll be introduced shortly, assumed that the source of the funds had been profoundly embarrassing, and most likely sexual, because Tiberius never told the same story twice about where it came from, and he would have bragged incessantly if he had any hand in actually earning the money, or even if he'd gotten it by pure luck. Tiberius had purchased the Peregrine Eon, a decommissioned excursion fast troop transport had been scooped up even a decommissioned excursion fast troop transport that had been souped up even further by about 3 successive owners, and converted it into a fast courier. The Peregrine had come with V-37, the artificial intelligence robot butler of the first non-military owner. V-37 was smarter than most unenhanced biological sophons, and far, far smarter than Tiberius. So with the robot's advice and a certain flexibility in his definition of legal cargo, Tiberius was able to make a profit. V-37, of course, could have done far more. V-37, of course, could have done far more with his existence and would have been happily emancipated by dozens of governments, but it didn't really have emotions. Well, it had picked up a few bad habits and looked a bit like While it had picked up a few bad habits that looked a bit like emotions from its owners, none of those were really conducive to pursuing a career. To another great run, buddy. Tiberius hefted his drink. Well, less drink and more cleaner. The bar seldom served beings that drink alcohol. However, ethanol was a fairly effective solvent throughout the universe, and the other cleaning chemicals smelled a lot like juniper to Tiberius. So he was pretending it was gin. V-37 said it was mostly safe to drink. Muddy, run profitable, no starve. V-37 lifted the memory chip it had used to ingest a virus that was currently playing hob. With its own perception of reality and its logic centers. Given a few hours, its virus scanner would typically take care of the intruder. So what's next on the run? So what's our next run? Normally, Tiberius would have padded that question out slightly to hide the fact that he was essentially completely trusting his fate to the used robotic butler. But V-37 had its own version of getting blackout drunk. Tiberius was pretty sure tonight was one of those nights. In a smaller increment of time than most biologicals were capable of noticing, V-37 scanned the local internet, read all the job listings and shipping requests, and analyzed them against current market conditions and Eon's capabilities, and found the perfect job.
I have sent our best lead to your datacom, sir.
V, this is a picture of some cross-dressing Rigelians. Tiberius tilted the phone back towards V-37 so the robot could see.
That is true,
V-37 said carefully.
Perhaps it will not be as profitable as I imagined.
Tiberius squinted down at the picture. The Rigelians had been growing their children in vats for as long as humans had been lighting fires. Their sexual organs, their whole bodies really, were little more than atrophied nubs, male or female. It didn't matter. They were just an unattractive bundle of grey spindly limbs and huge eyes. Honestly, it was strange that the whole race was so hung up on the gender bending.
I have a second lead, sir.
There is a distress
posting on the local net. Apparently, an individual is being held against their will and seeks rescue. Better yet, location data on the posting indicates that it's just a few blocks down.
Hey, what? Never mind. We need to call the cops if someone has been kidnapped.
There is no such thing on this world. All security is private or crowdsourced. Distress postings alert the local community of incidents that might involve the police on another world. There is typically a reward for such a service, although no reward is listed here. Sorry, it is probably a poor job. I will search again, sir.
Wait, no. I should at least look to see if someone... I should at least look if someone's in trouble. That was probably the floor cleaner talking. Tiberius had never shown a particular inclination to heroism in the past. After 3 attempts, V-37 beamed the relevant data to his phone, and Tiberius found himself looking at one of the most amazing examples of convergent evolution in the entire galaxy. Sure, the woman's skin was dark blue and her hair and eyes were sky blue, but otherwise she looked almost perfectly human. And that was strange. The bartender was probably the second most human-looking being in the room. He, at least, had an upright posture, a head and a dermis that looked a bit like an earthly snakeskin. He also only had one leg, which he used to pogo stick and He also only had one leg, which he used like a pogo stick, and 4 tentacle arms that divided into 4 shorter, more flexible tentacles at their ends. Beyond that, there was a table of feathered gastropods. They lacked limbs of any sort, but seemed to be perfectly comfortable picking things up and manipulating them with their dozens of eyes, which were attached to their long stalk-like appendages. The dominant life form locally looked a lot like a deciduous shrub crossed with something that would be getting in its energy. Crossed with something that should be getting its energy from a volcanic vent at the bottom of the sea. So a humanoid girl alien, and a hot one at that, was a very unusual sight. Looking at the picture of this blue distressed damsel made his libido wake up and loudly shouted support for the heroism of any sort. And loudly shouted support for heroism of every sort. Tiberius tossed back the last of his floor cleaner, slammed the glass down on the table, stood up and shouted, "Let's do this thing!" B-37 slammed down his dated chit and stood up abruptly as well. Unfortunately, the act of standing unlocked the last set of files the virus needed to fully compromise the robot's operating system, which he shouted was "yeah" in a moan that modulated from table rattlingly low. To ear-bleedingly high. Then all his joints locked solid, and he slowly tipped over, crashing into the floor. 30 minutes later, Tiberius had hired a porter to carry V back to the ship, walked a flu box to the location of the distress posting, and cased the joint. Or, at least, he'd say he cased the place when he retold the story later. In truth, even Tiberius's consciousness would twinge at that particular description. The location of his damsel in distress had proven to be a smallish private residence with large windows and the light on inside. Looking through them, he had seen 2 spider-like beings in front of the room watching an entertainment center and shooting periodic looks at the door. A third spider dude was in the back room with a large machine of some sort and the blue girl tied to a chair. If Tiberius had any interaction with the news, he might have recognized the giant spiders and realized that they were, perhaps, closer to the correct side of history than the blue girl. Fortunately, he did not, so the night's events would continue to be about punching bug monsters and saving beautiful ladies, rather than descending into a complicated meditation meditation on if ends justify the means. Rather than descending into a complicated meditation on if ends justify the means, or if it is better to take a longer and purer road to justice. Tiberius considered a couple plans for assaulting the house. The Space Force Spec Ops guys he'd known would have done it cleanly and quiet. Get into the house vents, drop down on the lone creature in the back, snap its neck, and have the girl out before any of the others even knew something had happened. The problem was, Tiberius didn't know how to get into the house's vents or where the spiders' things' necks were. Instead, he decided to go through the front door, just beat up all the guards. This wasn't quite as bad of a plan as it sounded. Humans weren't the fastest, strongest, or smartest race out there. They should have ended up as a protectorate. They should have ended up as a protectorate race of some large galactic power, except for one important detail. They had a great mod community. Nearly every race used some pieces of implant technology. However, for most races, perfecting any implant was a huge struggle. They had to work through every last detail to prevent it from being rejected by the neurobiology. rejected by neurology, biology, psychology, immune system, or culture. Only mankind could handle most prostheses. Only mankind could handle most prostheses and implants with ease. But yet, our genome was practically plastic because it was translated directly into proteins, and we could steal snippets from almost any other creature on our planet. Most races weren't so lucky. Due to this, the Space Force had developed a suite of modifications that let its soldiers go toe-to-toe with multi-ton chitin-armored monstrosities and the relentless hordes of hive minds. And due to some compromising photos, Tiberius had of the sergeant who handled his out-processing, he still had access to all of those. Tiberius gave a battle roar and launched himself down the street. Towards the house where the woman was being held. By the time he hit the door, and he hit it without slowing, he was moving at a fast enough, decently speed. By the time he hit the door, he hit it without slowing. He was moving as fast as a decently speedy ground transport. The door to the house was solid steel, set in a steel frame, fixed into some sort of silica-based building material. But it wasn't tough enough to take the hit. It crumpled under Tiberius's shoulder, broke free from its deadbolt and hinges simultaneously, and flew into the room, hitting one of the giant spiders. Tiberius staggered in after the door, off balance from losing most of his momentum, and from the hit itself. For a moment, the spider that wasn't under the door and Tiberius stared at each other. Tiberius recovered first, and declared, "Give me the girl, and no one has to get hurt." A very unspider-like squawk issued from under the destroyed door, and Tiberius amended his statement with a slightly embarrassed, "more hurt. Nobody has to get more hurt." By that time, the spider on the couch had processed things, at least as far as intruder alert, prepared to repel boarders. And she, all spiders were female. Had Tiberius known anything about the race, he would have identified this from their size and majestic natural markings. Grab two Weird punctuation. Had Tiberius known anything about the race, he would have identified this from their size and majestic natural markings. Grabbed two scimitar-like swords from where they'd been resting beside the couch and jumped at Tiberius. Tiberius tried to sidestep, but only half managed. The scimitar in the spider's rightmost foot licked out, and its tip caught him in the shoulder. It did not, however, cut through his flesh. One of the Space Force's best enhancements was to place a layer of non-Newtonian fluid between the dermis and epidermis. Of all of its recruits. Normally, the fluid layer wasn't even noticeable when it was exposed to a sudden sharp shock, like, for example, a giant spider trying to cut off a spacer's arm with a scimitar. The liquid component of fluid was driven away and diaminoid. The liquid component of the fluid was driven away, and the diamondoid fullerene solid component locked together, providing a nearly unbreakable armor. As such, the blade only scored a shallow slice in Tiberius's shoulder. More of a scratch than anything. The hit was enough to spin him around back towards the angry spider. So he kicked out, catching and breaking one of the thing's legs. There was a fountain of milky blue copper-based blood. The creature shrieked, tucked its now shattered leg up under it, and danced backwards on the remaining legs. "Go now," he shouted at it. I'm only here for the girl, and this planet doesn't even have cops. You can just walk away. Tiberius wasn't strictly sure any of that statement was true. How far could you really trust a 5-minute conversation with a plastered robot? But he knew if the bugs walked or skittered away, he wasn't going to break any more of their legs and had to count. But he knew that if the bugs walked or skittered away, he wasn't going to break any more of their legs, and that had to count for something. The second insectoid jumped him. This one had a spear. It looked like it came from some crazy martial tradition where the practitioners were really serious about spears. The thing had a fancy barbed head, intricate designs painted all along the shaft, and a streamer trailing off the end. Fortunately, his boosted speed and reaction time allowed Tiberius to grab the spear before he got stabbed. Unfortunately, whatever martial art this particular ninja spider was practicing had procedures for that. The spider twisted the spear down, planting it into the floor of the house, then flipped over him, using the spear for extra leverage. When she landed on Tiberius's far side, the spear came back around, and Tiberius came with it. When she landed on Tiberius's far side, the spear came back up, and Tiberius came with it, which effectively hurled him back towards the door that he'd come in only a minute or two before. Tiberius tried to twist around as he flew through the door so he'd catch it with his feet, allowing him to spring back towards the opponents with an aerial attack. Only his zero-G training had been a long time ago, so he's actually managed a sort of mid-air epileptic fit before he hit the door frame upside down and blacked out. Nope. Reading like my ass today. Only his zero-G training was a long time ago, and he actually managed. Only his zero-G training had been a long time ago, so he actually managed a sort of mid-air epileptic fit before he hit the door frame upside down and backward and then fell to the earth, landing on his head. A lesser man probably would have broken his neck. Tiberius's neck, along with his other bones, was reinforced. It'd leave him dizzy. The Space Force had no way to anchor the brain in place, so they still tended to flop around during sudden accelerations and decelerations. Scuttlebutt said the Force was working on that. Scuttlebutt said that you didn't want to be in the trial programs for that enhancement. Seeing his weakness, both spiders screamed, which was horrifying, and came charging in again. Tiberius did a sort of half somersault, half roll out of the door to get away from them, and that's where his luck sort of turned around. The door was low and narrow, having been designed for a sort of deep-sea shrub creature. A giant spider would probably have a hard time fitting through it even under the best of circumstances. Two enraged giant spiders trying to make it through at once was right out, and they sort of tangled up at the door in a ball of too many legs, too many weapons, and too much chitin. One of them managed to throw something that looked like a remote for an entertainment center at him, but beyond that, they were stuck. Tiberius had basically recovered from his earlier hit. Now he danced forward and threw more snapping kicks at the trapped spider legs. They seemed to be a vulnerable area, even if there was a lot of redundancy in this particular system. His kicks broke 5 legs total, though he honestly wasn't certain how they were distributed between the creatures. In return, he took several more spears and scimitars thrusts, but again, they only left shallow cuts. After 30 seconds of ducking, kicking, stabbing, and thrusting, the spiders backed out of the door. They were moving slowly now, with several legs tucked up under them, and there was quite a lot of blood on the floor. The spider's retreat left a clear shot between Tiberius and the bedroom where the blue girl was being held. Tiberius sprinted for it, clearing the common area of the house in a few long, fast strides, and knocking the bedroom door down upon him. Open with his shoulder. The interior was made of something light. Tiberius didn't really have time to decide what it was. Tiberius didn't have time to decide what The interior door was made of something light. Tiberius didn't really have time to decide what, as it splintered around him. But he was able to hold on to much more of his momentum than he had when smashing on into the building. But he was able to hold on to much more of his momentum than he had when he was smashing his way into the building. That was fortunate because the buzz loud enough. That was fortunate because a buzz loud enough to shake his teeth in his head fired off an instant that he came through the door. "Crap! Laser!" Tiberius yelled to no one in particular. Then he rolled across the floor, trying not to get in the line of the fire. Then he rolled across the floor, trying to get out of the line of fire. None of his enhancements dealt with laser fire. There was another buzz, and a series of pockmarks stitched themselves into the floor that Tiberius had just been laying on as individual pulses of coherent light turned those chunks of floor into plasma. After a second, Tiberius' uncontrolled tumble fetched up Tiberius's controlled tumble fetched up the alien. After a second, Tiberius's uncontrolled tumble fetched up against the alien something. It was probably furniture, but in the second that he had to examine it, he couldn't tell it was for sitting, sleeping, defecating, storing personal possessions, or laying eggs. Regardless, a quick, awkward scramble turned into cover. That was a great thing about laser fire. American colonial period muskets would have penetrated the flimsy alien Kia furniture. But the laser fire couldn't. American colonial period muskets would have penetrated the flimsy alien Kia furniture, but the laser fire couldn't, or rather, it wouldn't fail instantly. The furniture jutted with tiny explosions as the laser operator drilled through it. But it gave Tiberius a moment to put his Space Force and place laser tactics into play. He tore off his shirt. The room had a fancy light fixture, Due to some strange fixation of the locals, practically every room on the planet did. Just as his cover collapsed into two smoldering chunks, Tiberius jumped for it. The laser platform noticed his movement and tracked it, but again, it couldn't quite keep up. The heart of Space Force placed weapons tactics was that most non-human races couldn't shoot for crap. They couldn't throw things with enough force to hurt anyone, so they lacked the mental hardware to extrapolate a path. That was easy to overcome with a computer. The laser, for example, targeted and moved itself, so the operator stayed pointed at its target. They typically sat atop the weapon, so the operator wouldn't be thrown off like a mechanical bull's rider. The tracking speed of the platform was limited. In an open field, that was meaningless. In an alien bedroom, Tiberius could keep just ahead of it. He got one hand on the light fixture and swung around in an arc that redirected his path towards the laser and confused its tracking system for half a second as it stitched a line of shots out across the ceiling. A half second was enough. Tiberius let go of the light and flew towards the laser and its operator. There was a strange instant where time almost seemed to freeze. Tiberius drifted through the air as slowly as he might have in deep space, and it wasn't clear if the track speed of the laser turret or its ballistic arc would reach its goal first. Red light was scattering off the lens of the laser, and in a moment it looked like an angry glowing eye. He could imagine it speaking. "Stop mucking around and let me shoot you. It'll be easy. I have data about humans so I can hit just the right spot. One pulse to ball your skin, one to blacken and burst your ribs, and then the next takes your heart. Less than a second total, I promise." And then the time lurched forwards, and Tiberius tossed his shirt over the laser's aperture. There was an angry wail from the machine, and its beam was cut off so the heat and light weren't reflected back into the mechanism. In a pleasant turn of events, the spider on the laser wasn't armed. Tiberius threw four open hands. Tiberius threw 4 open-handed blows and broke 4 spindly chitin-covered legs. The spider reacted to that by clumsily jumping away and banging into a wall. "I am champion!" Tiberius roared, raising his hands in triumph. As statements went, that was dramatically untrue. The room was on fire. The other 2 guards had just made it through the door, and the laser operator wasn't totally out.
Hurry, over here.
All right, he thought. I'm here for a reason. The blue girl was on a chair in a corner of the room. The blue girl was on a chair. The blue girl was on a chair in the corner that hadn't been shot up, set on fire, or crashed into. Good luck, that. The spiders moved slowly as Tiberius sprinted across the room and ripped the girl free from her bonds. They were all limping, and they were all clearly taking the human in their midst seriously. at this point. Mainly, though, they thought that they had him trapped, so they were spreading out and taking time to make a coordinated assault. The blue girl wasn't going to make fighting them off any... The blue girl wasn't going to make fighting them off another time any easier. She had climbed him like a tree as soon as he'd freed her. Her chest heaved against his. She was whispering in his ear, telling him that he was her hero, and that she knew someone would come to save her. The spiders took a step forward. The laser operator was clearly angry. The spiders took a step forward. The laser operator... The spiders took a step forward. The laser operator was clearly angling towards his shirt now. The spiders took a step forward. The laser operator was clearly angling towards his shirt now that it had some backup. The other 2 had evil looks on their non-faces. Space Force subdermal enhancements could be defeated by just stabbing someone slowly. The spider guards looked up for some slow stabbing. Cover your eyes and, just how delicate are your arms? Like, could getting them cut off kill you?
What?
The spiders took another step forward. Too late. Tiberius took 3 quick running steps backwards, then jumped out the window. The glass wasn't enough to cut his skin, and if the blue girl got cut up, if she didn't bleed to death. The glass wasn't enough to cut up his skin, and if the blue girl got cut up, she didn't bleed to death. Even carrying her, he was able to outdistance the limping spiders on the way back to his ship. It was a good thing that he'd had the foresight to break all those legs. 18 Earth hours later, and a couple of light years away, Tiberius sat in the galley of the Eon with an ice pack on his genitals. There was a cheerful ding, and V-37 booted back up successfully, restored from a backup it had taken of itself before it went out drinking. The robot looked around the room for a moment, and then focused on its captain.
I presume I had a good time last night?
Tiberius glowered, but didn't say anything. In truth, neither being was certain if nights were... In truth, neither being was certain if nights where he had to restore the robot from its backups were good or not. The robot downloaded and processed the Eon's logs from... The grammar here is just a bit off. The robot downloaded and processed the Eon's logs from while it was out.
Sir, there is a Veton lying naked in your bed.
Tiberius continued to glower.
Sir, I must inform you that you should not have sexual relations with that female. While Veton look quite similar to humans, there are some important differences to be aware of.
Tiberius grunted. This particular grunt meant, "Thanks for the super timely information, Sparky. Shame you weren't around to drop that truth bomb earlier." Being neither human nor organic, V-37 was totally incapable of intuiting this meaning, and carried on without interruption.
While human sexuality is based around friction and touch, the sensation of Vetan sexuality is derived from chemical stimulation of the dermis and the olfactory information. The female will secrete an acid while the male...
Yes, I know, thank you. Yes, thank you. I picked up on that when she started to sink like a roadkill and tried to burn my schlong off. Yes, thank you. I picked that up. Yes, thank you. I picked that up when she started to stink like roadkill and tried to burn my schlong off while doing her best starfish impression. Silence reigned for a long moment in the galley. Oddly, it was the human who broke it. Can you believe she claimed that I was doing it wrong?
From her perspective,
V-37 corrected.
From her perspective,
V-37 correctly interpreted the shift in Tiberius' expression and trailed off. Its room-reading skills could have used improvement as it did continue.
if I were to coat your erogenous zones in a layer of non-reactive petroleum distillate and then apply a dusting of some potent base to that, and then apply a dusting of some potent base to that, you should be able to simulate...
No! Silence.
I've completed a biometric analysis of the Vetan female. Were you aware that she's kidnapped, Princess? Her planet is in the middle of a civil uprising, and there is several million cash reward for her safe return.
I was not. The news was enough to win a smile from Tiberius, despite the persisting burning ache in the regions of his body, which he would really, really rather not have. And I was not. That news was enough to win a smile of Tiberius, despite the persistent burning ache in regions of his body, which he really rather not have had aching or burning.
Shall I set course?
And somewhere in space, the Peregrine Eon made a sharp turn down to the port and a new heading towards fame, wealth, and glory, or whatever else happened. Or whatever else happened to find... Or whatever else it happened to find while seeking those things. End of story. All right. It was a bit of a rough one. 1, because of concentration. 2, because punctuation and grammar was slightly off. So it kind of messes with the flow. Just for information, this is like a 6-year-old story. So they wrote them different back then. It's not my imagination. It was different. Novel, shall we say. Alrighty, that is 2 stories. Done. I think the voice is pretty much done as much as it can. It's 3-hour stream so far, 2 stories. So that's about usual.
All we need to do is generate some backgrounds, make some thumbnails, and away we go. Move this over here for now. Yes, time for a little break. And some caffeine. Always time for caffeine. Hello, dog. What? You want up? No, you don't want up. You just want to come in here and wag your tail at me. Okay? Wag your tail. Wag your tail. You want out? You want out? Okay. The dog has informed me that it wants out. Be right back. Alrighty. The dog has been set forth free onto the world to do doggy things. We close the door to the offices when we record. So he either gets locked in or locked out. He doesn't like either. I can put my glasses on. I can clean my glasses and then put them on. That sounds good. We shall do that. Fair enough, Marcus. Fair enough. Interesting. Very interesting. I missed the question. Let me go back. I do apologize. It was probably when I was reading. What are you trying to do? HFY stories? Just narration in general? I think, personally, I started off with just asking. I didn't ingratiate myself or anything like that. I think established authors would feel like that's smooching, may not like that. So I just came outright and asked the big authors on Royal Road and on Reddit at the time. Just straight out asked, "Hi, I'm new to narrating. I want to narrate your story. Do you mind?" And then after I'd done my first one, I would link to my story and say, "This is my work. You can have a look at it if you want. Do you mind?" And that seemed to work quite nicely. So it's not really the authors that are going to be the problem. It's finding stories to attract an audience. That's going to be a problem. Now, for an initial audience, you personally need to go find your personal audience. When you start a channel, the algorithm doesn't know anything about you. So it doesn't know who it doesn't know who to recommend your stuff to. So they will not recommend your stuff because they don't know. And then over time, it'll build a profile of like, okay, these people like your stories and these people don't, so we'll push it out to these people. So in the beginning, it's better that you go find the people that you think will enjoy your channel so that the algorithm can build up a profile and then start spreading the story. That's my opinion anyway. That's how I did it. I think being polite and respectful goes a long way. I hope that helps, answers the question. Right. Background's generated. Yes, politeful. Polite and respectful. Not a problem, Captain. I've never tried to hide anything I've done, like something special. It's just perseverance. Keep bashing your head against the wall. Don't take things too serious. And away you go. You're going to get authors that aren't going to get back to you. It's a fact of life. You're going to get authors that are going to get snooty at you. That's also a fact of life. So you need to be able to just deal with that and move on. Ask the next author. You don't have to butter them up. I've never buttered an author up. I think it's disingenuous to do it, from my opinion. I mean, if you're a fan of the work, fine, but have a civil conversation with them rather than a fan conversation. Because essentially you're conducting a business transaction. So you do want to kind of keep it businessy. If not 100% so, at least a little bit. My opinion for you, Matty D, is just do it. Do it with your phone. You've got a phone. I think you've got a phone. I'd imagine you've got a phone. Use your phone's microphone. It's not bad. It's free. And you can start from there. It's probably your phone microphone is probably better than the microphone I used to start the channel. So, in theory, you could do all of this through a phone alone. It would just take a bit of finagling. But I find a lot of people will be like, well, I need the perfect gear. You don't need the perfect gear. You just need some gear. Don't need perfect gear. Don't even need kind of good gear. You just need to work. Do the thing. Whatever the thing is, do it. Use a janky setup. I did. I bolted wood to my table and built a blanket fort. And used a crappy $10 microphone to start the channel. But once you get going, just keep going. One foot in front of the other. A better way to put it is, starting with bad equipment is better than never starting with good equipment. Blanket fort. It sounds funny. Make a blanket fort. Crawl into that blanket fort, and it'll... More blankets you put on top, great. Literally, that's what I did. I lived next to a main road, my old house. I just built a blanket fort with enough blankets. It is hot as hell. It is uncomfortable. It is unpleasant, but it worked. Yeah, it's always easier to start with audio and then move to video. Yeah, just about literally a blanket fort. I mean, mine was a bit more complicated than the usual one because I just bolted uprights to my table and then built the blanket fort over my computer table. And it used to be horrible in there, but it's got soundproof. Probably even a little bit better than the soundproofing I have now, but I'm not dying of heat. Yeah, that is very true, Walpex. I think I've said that before as well. The better the equipment, the more mistakes you will see because you don't know how to use the equipment. You don't have the techniques. So it's going to pick up more mistakes. And yeah. My first microphone was a $10 microphone. My second microphone was, I want to say, $100? Egg cartons do work, but you need to stick it to a wall. So you're going to ruin a wall to do it. Which sometimes isn't something you can do. Especially if you're in like a living room area. You can't really soundproof the whole living room. Whereas a sound blanket does nice localized soundproofing. So you can have a section in a living room that is in a blanket fort and it'll work. The other thing, this is a simple trick, is turn the your microphone sensitivity down and talk louder. It puts more strain on the voice, but it does remove a lot of the background. So if you've got a non-chordoid mic, which if you're using a phone, it's very directional. But if you've got, just reduce the microphone volume and talk louder. You could. I think just as a starting thing, building a blanket fort is easy because it's easy to build and easy to take apart. You don't have to spend money. You don't have to nail things to walls or anything like that. I've never used an egg carton in my life. The other thing you can use, let me get the name, which I actually wanted to test, which will work. Is foam bed topper. As a cheap way. me get the picture. So this is one of the ones I want to try out. And if I wasn't moving, I would try it out. Give me... Okay, so you could also get something like this and build a bit of a fort with this. So this is a bed liner. They use it for older beds that have lost their bounce and stuff. So it's got the ridges, which will distribute the noise, and it's not super dense foam, so it's not going to be too heavy. So you could use something like this as well. And it is relatively cheap. It's definitely a lot cheaper than the real panels. And at that point, it's just giving you incremental differences. Yeah, so you put this on your bed. It's just a topper for the bed. It's called a, what is it? Zone out. A convoluted foam mattress topper overlay. And you can get them all different sizes. I mean, this goes up to king, which is... okay, a bit more expensive. So that is $50 roughly. If you directly translate that into USD, but it's probably closer to $30. So normally you just plonk it on your bed, but you can just stick this up against behind where you speak and in front of you, and then maybe a little bit to the sides. So you can also use that. I mean, I personally at the moment am using, what do I call it? Oops, that was the wrong one. I'm using duvet batting. 2 layers of duvet batting for mine, which does the same thing. I mean, in the beginning, you want to keep it as simple as possible. You want to keep your costs down. You don't want to spend too much money. More important, you'll get more value out of improving your skills than improving your equipment. Use Audacity. If you've got a computer, Audacity is free. It's what I use. Good evening, Banana. I hope you are doing well today. Yeah, but I mean, Audacity's been around for 20 years now, and has always been a good piece of software. I know a lot of people that use it. Fair. You can get normal recording software on there. Just the voice recorder is fine. Look, in the beginning it's always more difficult. You expend time to get stuff. So, I mean, when I started my channel, I was working 16 hours a day, 7 days a week. I did that for 3 years. At the end of that 3 years, I could barely stand because my back was so bad. I could barely raise my hands above my head because my shoulders were so bad. I was taking vitamin D supplements, and I could barely talk. But I had a channel. Banana, I have played them. I played 2 a lot, I played 3 a lot, and I've played a little bit of 4. Okay. That is a very weird way to pronounce it. Because I see it as a variation of audible. So, audacity. So, audio. Maybe I'm pronouncing it wrong. Wouldn't be the first time. No, nor will it be the last time. No. Yeah, that's very true. Cheers, Rogue. Thank you for popping past.
So there's always weird pronunciations for everything. Do I have an arrow? Open. Open. Sure, got the arrow. Open. Document. The arrow. The arrow. The arrow. Ah, there it is. Good morning, James. Hope you're doing well. Yeah, well, I'll wrap it up soon enough. I'm pretty much done with work anyway. It is not great, but it means I can do voices like this. I can be Batman. I'm Batman. No, I wasn't calling you, dog. If I was calling you, it'd be... Alrighty. But the cortisone definitely does a number on the voice. And we're at the 3.5 hour mark. So, fun and games. Any other last minute questions about narrating, YouTube, whatever, before we log off for the day? If you want to do something, I think, personally, do it. Give it a try. Give it a huge try. Make what you have work for you. My dog is named Batman. So, it gets a bit confusing when I start talking about Batman. Could be talking about Batman, or I could be talking about my dog. So in that analysis, I'm the Robin to the dog's Batman. Oh, good stuff. Fair enough. Or both things can be true. He is both Batman and he is Bruce Wayne. So answering either way is true.
Yeah, I will. Don't worry, I know where to push it up to. It's fine. It's just a bit dehydrated at the moment. And tired. That's fine. For anybody who's aspiring to be a narrator, voice actor, whatever, if it starts hurting, stop. Immediately. Do not continue. Do not push through it. I say this having done this myself. There shouldn't be pain. You should go hoarse before you go sore. And by the same virtue, if you go hoarse for more than 2 days, you might need to seek a professional. And the other thing is you must never stop talking as a recovery method for more than 2 days. Same as a sprained ankle or whatever. You need to keep working it so that it doesn't do anything weird. But if it hurts, you definitely need to stop. And it takes a while to build up the stamina. You've seen how long it's taken me to go from a 10 minutes up till we did 40 minutes of story. So it takes a long time to build up the stamina in the vocal muscles. So don't push it too much. Think of it as any other exercise. Just keep at it. 1, 2, 1, 2, and you just do vocal exercise every day. Flapjacks. But I also do understand desperation, which is why I pushed through pain and hoarseness to do what I did. But that would be my advice. Learn some warm-up exercises. I'm not going to tell you, because warm-up exercises I do may not be the same as the warm-up exercises you need to do. And always take what anybody says with a pinch of salt for fixing your voice. Even from narrators and voice actors. But anyways, I think I'm going to call it a day. We're at 3 hours, 32 minutes. It's been a decent day. We've done 2 stories. We've had a nice chat. It's all good. My eyes are starting to unfocus, so that's a good sign to stop the stream. It's probably because of the bright lights shining into my eyes. But anyways, thank you all for spending your time with me. It is very much appreciated. And hopefully I was able to entertain you and answer some questions and enlighten you on some of the deep, spooky stuff of the narration world or YouTube world or whatever. And I will see you all tomorrow, I think. Yes, tomorrow. Tomorrow is Tuesday. So yes, I'll see you all tomorrow. I hope you all have a fantastic one. And yes, goodbye.